Guys, so today we are going to start our new read aloud because we finished Freak the Mighty, and it's going to be our last read aloud of the year. It is called The Unteachables by Gordon Corman. Alright, so today I'm going to read the first 3 chapters of the book. Alright, the first chapter is Kiana Rubini. If I can open to the right page. Kiana Rubini. It's no fun riding to school with Stepmonster. Not with Chauncey screaming his lungs out in the back seat. Don't get me wrong. I'd cry too if I just figured out that Stepmonster is my mother. But at 7 months old, I don't think he's processed that yet. He just cries. He cries when he's hungry. He cries when he's full. He cries when he's tired. He cries when he wakes up from a long nap. Basically, any day that ends in a Y, Chauncey cries. There also seems to be a connection between his volume control and the gas pedal of the SUV. The louder he howls, the faster Stepmonster drives. "Who's a happy baby?" she coos over her shoulder into the back seat, where the rear-facing car seat is anchored. "Who's a happy big boy?" "Not Chauncey, that's for sure," I tell her. "Hey, school zone, you better slow down." She speeds up. Motion is soothing to a baby. Maybe so, but as we slalom up the driveway, swerving around parked parents dropping off their kids, and screech to a halt by the entrance, it turns out to be one motion too many. Chauncey throws up his breakfast. Suddenly, there's cereal on the ceiling and dripping down the windows. That's another thing about Chauncey. His stomach is a food expander. It goes in a teaspoon and comes out 5 gallons. "Get out of the car," Stepmonster orders frantically. "You have to come in with me," I protest. "They won't let me register without an adult." She looks frazzled, and I guess I don't blame her. That much baby puke must be hard to face. "I'll run home, change him, and wipe down the car. Wait for me. 10 minutes, 15 at most." What can I do? I haul my backpack out of the SUV and she zooms off around the circular drive. I don't even have the chance to make my usual Parmesan cheese joke. That's what it smells like when Chauncey barks. When I first came from California to stay with Dad and Stepmonster, I thought they ate a lot of Italian food. That was a disappointment. One of many. So there I am in front of Greenwich Middle School, watching swarms of kids arriving for the first day of classes. A few of them glance in my direction, but not many. New girl? Who cares? Actually, the new girl doesn't care much either. I'm a short timer. I'm only in Greenwich for a couple of months while Mom is off in Utah shooting a movie. She's not a star or anything like that, but this could be her big break. After 10 years of paying the bills with bit parts in sitcoms and TV commercials, she finally landed an independent film. Well, no way I could go with her for 8 weeks. Not that I was invited. Eventually, a bell rings and the crowd melts into the school. No Stepmonster. I'm officially late, which isn't the best way to start my career in Greenwich, but short timers don't stress over things like that. Long before it could come back to haunt me on a report card, I'll be ancient history. I check my phone. It's been 20 minutes since 10 minutes, 15 at the most. That's SST, Stepmonster Standard Time. I try calling, but she doesn't pick up. Maybe that means she's on her way and will be here any second. But lots of seconds tick by. No barf-encrusted SUV. With a sigh, I sit myself down on the bench at the student drop-off and prop my backpack up on the armrest beside me. Stepmonster, her real name is Louise, isn't all that monstrous when you think about it. She's way less out of touch than Dad, which might be because she's closer to my age than his. She isn't exactly thrilled with the idea of having an 8th grader dropped in her lap right when she was getting the hang of being a new mom. She's trying to be nice to me. She just isn't succeeding. Like when she strands me in front of a strange school when she's supposed to be here to get me registered. The roar of an engine jolts me back to myself. For a second I think it must be her. But nope, a rusty old pickup truck comes sailing up the roadway, going much faster than even Stepmonster would dare. As it reaches the bend in the circular drive, the front tire climbs the curb and the pickup is coming right at me. Acting on instinct alone, I hurl myself over the back of the bench and out of the way. The truck misses the bench by about a centimeter. The side mirror knocks my book bag off the armrest, sending it airborne. The contents, binders, papers, pencil case, gym shorts, sneakers, lunch, are scattered to the four winds, raining down on the pavement. The pickup screeches to a halt. The driver jumps out and starts rushing after my fluttering stuff. As he runs, papers fly out of his shirt pocket, and he's chasing his own things, not just mine. I join the hunt, and that's when I get my first look at the guy. He's a kid, like around my age. "Why are you driving?" I gasp, still in shock from the near miss. "I have a license," he replies, like it's the most normal thing in the world. "No way," I shoot back. "You're no older than I am." "I'm 14. He digs around in his front pocket and pulls out a laminated card. It's got a picture of his stupid face over the name Parker Elias. At the top it says, "Provisional license." "Provisional?" I ask. "I'm allowed to drive for the family business," he explains. "Which is what? A funeral parlor? You almost killed me." "Our farm," he replies. "I take produce to the market. Plus, I take my Grams to the senior center. She's super old and doesn't drive anymore." I've never met a farmer before. There aren't a lot of them in LA. I knew Greenwich was kind of the boonies, but I never expected to be going to school with Old MacDonald. He hands me my book bag with my stuff crammed in every which way. There's a gaping hole in the mirror. There's a gaping hole where the mirror blasted through the vinyl. "I'm running late," he stammers. "Sorry about the backpack." He jumps in the pickup truck, wheels it into a parking spot, and races into the building, studiously avoiding my glare. Still no sign of Stepmonster on the horizon. I call again, straight to voicemail. I decide to tackle the school on my own. Maybe I can get a head start filling out forms or something. The office is a madhouse. It's packed with kids who A, lost their schedules, B, don't understand their schedules, or C, are trying to get their schedules changed. When I tell the harassed secretary that I'm waiting for my parent and or guardian so I can register, she just points to a chair and ignores me. Even though I have nothing against Greenwich Middle School, I decide to hate it. Who can blame me? It's mostly Chauncey's fault. But let's not forget Parker McFarmer and his provisional license. My phone pings. A text from Stepmonster. "Taking Chauncey to pediatrician. Do your best without me. We'll get there at ASAP." The secretary comes out from behind the counter and stands before me, frowning. "We don't use our phones in school. You'll have to turn that off and leave it in your locker." "I don't have a locker," I tell her. "I just moved here. I have no idea where I'm supposed to be." She plucks a paper from the sheath sticking out of the hole in my backpack. "It's right here on your schedule." "Schedule? Where would I get a schedule? I don't even officially go to school here yet." "You're supposed to be in room 117. She rattles off a complicated series of directions. "Now off you go." And off I go. I'm so frazzled that I'm halfway down the main hall before I glance at the paper that's supposed to be a schedule. It's a schedule, all right, just not mine. At the top, it says Elias Parker, grade 8. This is Parker McFarmer's schedule. It must have gotten mixed up with my papers when we were gathering up all my stuff. I take 3 steps back in the direction of the office and freeze. I don't want to face that secretary again. There's no way she's going to register me without Stepmonster. And if there's a backlog at the pediatrician's, I'm going to be sitting in that dumb chair all day. No thanks. I weigh my options. It's only a 15-minute walk home. But home isn't really home. And I don't want to be there any more than I want to be here. And if I went to all the trouble of waking up and getting ready for school, then school is where I might as well be. My eyes return to Parker's schedule, room 117. Okay, it's not my class, but it's a class. And really, who cares? It's not like I'm going to learn anything in the next 2 months. At least nothing I can't pick up when I get back to civilization. I'm a pretty good student, and when Stepmonster finally gets here, they can page me and send me to the right place. Not that I'll learn anything there either. I've already learned the one lesson Greenwich Middle School has to teach me. 14-year-olds should not drive. That's when I learned lesson number 2. This place is a maze. My school in LA is all outdoors. You step out of class and you're in a glorious sunshine. You know where you're going next because you can see it across the quad and the numbers make sense. Here, 109 is next to 111, but the room next to that is labeled storage closet E61B2. Go figure. I asked a couple of kids who actually try to tell me that there's no such room as 117. There has to be. I tell the second guy, I'm in it. I show him the schedule, careful to cover the name with my thumb. Wait. His brow furrows. What's... He points to the class description. SCS 8. I blink. Instead of a normal schedule where you go to a different class every period, this says Parker stays in room 117 all day. Not only that, but under subject, it repeats the code SCS 8 for every hour except lunch at 12:08. Oh, here it is. I skip to the bottom where there's a key explaining what the code means. SCS 8, self-contained special 8th grade class. He stares at me. The Unteachables? Unteachables? I echo. He reddens. You know, like the Untouchables? Only, babbling now. These kids aren't untouchable. They're, well, unteachable. Bye. He rushes off down the hall, and I just know. I could read it in his face, but I didn't even need that much information. Where would you stick a guy who could annihilate a backpack with a half-ton pickup truck? The Unteachables are the dummy class. We have a couple of groups like that in my middle school in California, too. We call them the Disoriented Express, but it's the same thing. Probably every school has that. I almost marched back to the office to complain when I remember I've got nothing to complain about. Nobody put me in the Unteachables, just Parker. From what I've seen, he's in the right place. I picture myself sitting in the office all day, waiting for Stepmonster to arrive. If she arrives. Chauncey's health scares, which happen roughly every 8 minutes, stress her out to the point where she can't focus on anything else. To quote Dad, "Geez Louise." He really says that, an example of the sense of humor of the non-California branch of my family. So, I go to room 117. Turns out it's in the far corner of the school, over by the metal shop, the home and careers room, and the custodian's office. You have to walk past the gym, and the whole hallway smells like old sweat socks mixed with a faint barbecue scent. It's only temporary, I remind myself. And since my whole time in Greenwich is temporary anyway, it's more like temporary squared. Besides, dummy class, Disoriented Express, Unteachables, so what? Okay, maybe they're not academic superstars, but they're just kids, no different from anybody else. Even Parker, he's a menace to society behind the wheel of that truck. But besides that, he's a normal 8th grader, like the rest of us. Seriously, how unteachable can these Unteachables be? I push open the door and walk into room 117. A plume of smoke is pouring out the single open window. It's coming from the fire, roaring in the wastebasket in the center of the room. A handful of kids are gathered around it, toasting marshmallows, skewered on the end of number 2 pencils. Parker's one of them. His own marshmallow blackened like a charcoal briquette. An annoyed voice barks, "Hey, shut the door! You want to set off the smoke detector in the hall?" Oh my God. I'm with the Unteachables. Chapter 2. Mr. Kermit. The first day of school. I remember the excitement, new students to teach, new minds to fill with knowledge, new futures to shape. The key word is remember. That was 30 years ago. I was so young, not much older than the kids, really. Being a teacher was more than a job. It was a calling, a mission. True mission impossible. But I didn't know that back then. I wanted to be Teacher of the Year. I actually achieved that goal. That was when trouble started. Anyway, I don't get excited by the first day anymore. The things that still get my 55-year-old motor running are the small pleasures. The last tick of the clock before the 3:30 bell sounds. Waking up in the morning and realizing it's Saturday. The glorious voice of the weather forecaster. Due to the snowstorm, all schools are closed. And the most beautiful word of all, retirement. The first day of school means that it's only 10 months away. My younger self never would have imagined I'd turn into the kind of teacher who'd be crunching numbers, manipulating formulas, and counting down the nanoseconds until I can kiss the classroom and everybody in it goodbye. Yet, here I am. I sip from my super large coffee mug. The other teachers call it the toilet bowl when they think I'm not listening. They gripe that I owe extra money to the faculty coffee fund because I drink more than my fair share. Tough. The students are bad enough, but the dunderheads who teach them are even worse. Colleagues, they don't know the meaning of the word. A fat lot of support they ever offered me when it was all going wrong. Mr. Kermit, Dr. Thaddeus is standing over me in the faculty room, his $3,000 suit tailored just so. Superintendent, major dictator, a legend in his own mind. Christina Vargas, the principal, is with him. Nice to see you, Zachary. How was your summer? Hot, I tell her, but she keeps on smiling. She's one of the good ones, which puts me on guard. Thaddeus uses her to do his dirty work. Something's coming. I can smell it. There's been a change in the schedule, the superintendent announces. Christina will fill you in on the details. As you know, Mary Angeletto has left the district, the principal says. So we're moving you into her spot with the self-contained special 8th grade class. I stare at her. You mean the Unteachables? Dr. Thaddeus bristles. We don't use that term. Every teacher in this building knows what they are. I fire back. They're the kids you've given up on. They had their chance in 6th and 7th grade, and now you're just warehousing them until they can be the high school's problem. They're a challenging group, Christina concedes, which is why we've chosen a teacher with a great deal of experience. Of course, the superintendent goes on pleasantly, if you don't feel you're up to the job. Light dawns. So that's what this is really about. Thaddeus figured out that I qualify for early retirement after this year. He doesn't want the school district on the hook for supporting me forever. The Kermit men live till 95 minimum. My grandfather, at 106, is still president of the shuffleboard club at Shady Pines. That's why they're giving me the Unteachables. They aren't interested in my experience. They want my resignation. His response is all innocence. You're up for retirement already? I think of you as so young. It seems quite recent, that horrible Terra Nova incident, the media attention, the public outcry, the scandal. Well, there it is, Jake Terranova. Thaddeus is never going to forgive and forget, even though it wasn't my fault. Or maybe it was. They were my students after all, and it happened on my watch. What a hypocrite. Thaddeus wasn't superintendent then. He had Christina's job, principal, and did he ever take the credit when a class at his school scored number 1 in the country on the national aptitude test? He squeezed every ounce of glory out of that. Interviews, profiles in magazines. When there was traffic in the driveway, you could bet it was because a TV station mobile unit was on its way to interview the high exalted lord of all principals. Until the truth came out. A kid named Jake Terranova had gotten hold of the test and charged his classmates $10 a pop for a copy of it. That's why they aced it. They were cheating. And when the whole thing blew up, was Thaddeus there to take the heat the way he'd taken the acclaim? Not on your life. The teacher was to blame. That's who I've been ever since. The teacher whose class gave the entire Greenwich school district a black eye. Officially, life went on after that. No one revoked my teaching certificate or docked my pay or kicked me out of the union, but everything was different. When I stepped into the faculty room, people stopped talking. Colleagues wouldn't look me in the eye. Administration was administration kept changing my department. One year it was French, then English, then math, social studies, even phys ed. Me, with my 2 left feet. I went into a blue funk. Okay, that wasn't the school's fault, but it began to affect my personal life. My engagement to Fiona Bertelsmann fell apart. That was on me. I was lost in my own misery. Worst of all, the one thing that was most important to me, teaching, became a bad joke. The students didn't want to learn? Fine. I didn't particularly want to teach them. All I needed to do for my paycheck was show up. Until next June, when early retirement would carry me away from all this. And now Thaddeus thinks he can make me throw that away too, just to avoid a year with the Unteachables? Obviously, the superintendent doesn't have the faintest idea who he's messing with. I would happily go into room 117 with a pack of angry wildcats before I'd give him the satisfaction of forcing me out. I look from the superintendent to the principal and back to the superintendent again. I enjoy a good challenge. I pick up the toilet bowl and walk out of there, careful to keep the big mugs steady. Can't risk spilling coffee all over myself. It would spoil the dramatic exit. 3 decades in this school, and never once have I set foot inside of room 117. I know where it is, though, from the stint in phys ed. Somebody has to be in the remotest classroom of the entire building, but I decided to be offended by it. It's just another part of the conspiracy to force me out. Well, it won't work. After all, how bad can these unteachables really be? Behavior issues, learning problems, juvenile delinquents? Does Thaddeus honestly think I've never crossed paths with students like that throughout 30 years in the classroom? Bad attitudes? The kid hasn't been born with an attitude that's half as bad as mine at this point. Face it, the Unteachables can only hurt you if you try to teach them. I gave up on teaching anybody anything decades ago. Since then, my relationship with my class has been one of uncomfortable roommates. We don't much like each other, but everybody knows that if we just hold our noses and keep our mouths shut, we'll eventually get what we want. For me, that means early retirement. For the SCS 8 students, that means being promoted to the 9th grade. That part's a slam dunk because surely the middle school is dying to get rid of them. What would they have to do to get held back? Burn the whole place to the ground? I walk into my new classroom. A roaring fire in a wastebasket. Smoke pouring through the open windows. Kids toasting marshmallows on the end of pencils. Pencils catching fire. One pyromaniac in training, seeing if he can get his eraser to burn. An escapee standing outside in the bushes, gazing in, eyes wide with fear. A boy draped over a desk, fast asleep, oblivious to it all. Most kids would scramble to look innocent and be sitting up straight with their arms folded in front of them once the teacher puts in an appearance. Not this crew. If I came in with a platoon of ski marine paratroopers, it wouldn't make any more of an impression. I stroll over to the flaming wastebasket and empty the giant cup of coffee onto the bonfire, which goes out with a sizzle. Silence falls in room 117. Good morning, I announce, surveying the room. I'm your teacher, Mr. Kermit. Only 10 months until June. Chapter 3, Parker Elias. I love the sound the pickup truck makes when the motor roars to life. It's even cooler now with that little muffler problem, but that'll only last until Mom and Dad save up the money to get it fixed. Even without the extra noise, though, it's still awesome. I look down at the start button. Najeen Ratspots. That's what I saw the first time anyway. Now I know what it really says. Engine start stop. That's what reading is for me. I see all the letters, but they're kind of a mishmash. Like my class at school, which is SCS 8, although it looks like SS8C or S8SC or even CS8S. It messes me up at first a little until I figure out where I have to go. And then it doesn't matter what order the letters and numbers are in. The pickup jaunts over the packed dirt of the driveway before bumping onto the paved road where our property ends. Our farm is right outside town, so I haven't gone very far when a police car pulls up beside me. The cop gives me a thorough once-over with his eyes. I'm used to it. I'm kind of small for my age, so I look like a 12-year-old out for a joyride. I thought that new girl's eyes would pop out of her head when I jumped down from the pickup on the first day of school. Or maybe that's the expression she gives to everybody who knocks her book bag halfway to the moon. Let's set the record straight. I'm 14. They don't let you drive any younger than that, no matter what your special situation is. It's okay though. The police around here all know me. The cop rolls down his window and peers into the flatbed of the pickup, taking note of several bushel baskets of fresh tomatoes. "You're just taking those over to the farmer's market, right, Parker?" he calls. "Right, officer." "And straight to school after that?" I shake my head. "First I have to pick up Grams." The cop frowns. "Grams?" "My grandmother," I explain. "I have to take her to the senior center, then school." That's why I have a driver's license in 8th grade. It's a provisional license, although to me it usually looks more like Rivel Snoople Icelands. I'm allowed to drive the pickup as long as it's for farm business or for Grams, who's pretty old and sometimes kind of confused. No offense, Grams. My folks both work crazy hours on the farm, so I'm the only one who's free to pick her up at her apartment and take her to the center, where she hangs out all day. Then I drive to school, and after school, I pick her up and take her back to our house for dinner. She doesn't live with us, though. She refuses to give up her own place. "My independence," she calls it. The law says I can do all this because running a farm is considered a hardship. That's pretty stupid because we actually prefer living outside the city and having tons of open space when everybody else is stuck in a little postage stamp of grass. Plus, we don't have livestock, so we don't have to do any of that really gross farm stuff, like sticking your arm up the butt of a sick cow. I've only seen that on TV, but hard pass. I drop off the tomatoes at the market, watching the clock impatiently while Mr. Sardo weighs everything to the millionth of an ounce. Then straight to Grams. She's waiting for me in the lobby of her apartment building, but she's wearing a winter coat and it's like 80 degrees out, so I have to park and we go upstairs to put away the coat, and by the time I return from the closet, she's in the kitchen warming up leftover meatloaf for me. "But Grams, I'm going to be late for school." "Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, kiddo." I used to like it when she called me kiddo, but now I'm pretty sure it's because she can't remember my name. It bums me out. To be fair, she called me kiddo before she forgot my name, too. The difference is now it's the only thing she calls me. "I already had breakfast," I tell her. "You want mashed potatoes with that?" she asks. "It won't take long." "No, thanks. This is fine." Obviously, I eat the meatloaf. It's actually pretty good. Grams can still cook, even though she's forgotten most other things. She's been knitting me a sweater for the past 3 years that she just can't seem to finish. I've gotten a lot bigger in that time. But it's okay, because so is the sweater. It's draped over the back of the couch, a mass of dropped stitches, hanging strands, and random colors. It looks like a giant psychedelic wool amoeba. I gulp down the food as fast as I can, but it still throws off the schedule. By the time I drop Grams off at the senior center, I can already hear the bell ringing at school. With my grandmother, there's always something to slow you down. If it isn't meatloaf, then she's buttoned her blouse wrong, or she's wearing slippers instead of shoes, or she's waiting for Grandpa to come home, even though he died a long time ago. I'm used to being late. Grams is worth it. But it's my 4th time already, and it's only the first week of school. I barrel around the streets, busting the speed limit by a lot, and blowing at least one stop sign. I screech into the school parking lot, leaving a small mark on the side of Mr. Sarkisian's BMW. Not good. Carefully, I back out, find another spot, this one on the opposite side of the lot. I pull my trusty can of Scratch Guard out of the glove compartment and rub the evidence off my front bumper. Then I work on the Beamer a little. Not perfect, but it should keep Mr. S from noticing the damage long enough for him to have absolutely no idea where it might have come from. This is usually the part where my day starts to go downhill. I love getting to school, the driving and all that, but once I'm here, not so much. There's no problem with the building, and the teachers are okay, I guess. It just happens to be a place where I'm bad at everything that's considered important. It's a long walk to room 117. I take it slow, because who wants to rush somewhere you hate? I'm already late, though, so I open the door and walk inside. Before I know it, my feet slide out from under me, and wham! I'm flat on my back on the floor. It gets a big laugh and scattered applause from the 6 kids who are already there. The only person who doesn't react is our teacher, Mr. Kermit. He never lifts his face up from the New York Times crossword puzzle, except occasionally to take a sip from a humongous coffee cup. And that's not just today. He's like that all the time. Yesterday, when Barnston chucked one of his crutches and shattered the globe, the teacher didn't even so much as flinch. Not even when the Horn of Africa bounced off the side of his head. You could probably set off an atomic bomb on his desk, and he'd never notice. I scramble up. But when I turn back to the doorway to see what tripped me, I go down again, on my face this time. I can smell the floor, and taste it a little. There's butter all over it. "Who greased the floor?" I howl. The kids laugh louder, enough to penetrate the cone of silence and capture Mr. Kermit's attention. He glances up, sees me flopping like a fish out of water, and quickly goes back to his puzzle. If he's not the worst teacher in the world, he's definitely bottom 5. Most embarrassing of all, Kiana has to rescue me. She's the girl whose backpack I hit with the truck. She hauls me far enough from the buttered area that I could stand upright. My shoes are still a little slippery, but at least I can walk to my desk. Kiana turns to the rest of the class. "Who did that?" Raheem, who's fast asleep, lifts his head off the desk and looks around like a deer in headlights. "Did what?" "Let it go," I say, red-faced. "Why should you?" she demands. "Somebody buttered the doorway. Mr. Kermit's not going to stand for that." An absent-minded comes from the direction of the teacher's desk. "Shh." I drag my broken body into my chair. Who's the mystery prankster who almost put me in intensive care? Plenty of possibilities in this class. Barnston, the injured sports star, he gets away with everything. At least he did until they put him in SCS 8. Aldo, the jerk who flies off the handle every time the wind blows. Elaine, I sneak a look over my shoulder at the scariest girl in 8th grade. Oh, please, don't let it be her. Elaine rhymes with pain. I'll probably never find out who buttered the floor. If it was Elaine, I don't want to. When I glance up, Mr. Kermit is standing in front of me. At first, I'm flattered that he's come over to make sure I don't have a concussion. But no. He places a worksheet on my desk and wordlessly returns to his crossword puzzle. That's what we do in the special self-contained 8th grade class. At the beginning of each period, Mr. Kermit hands us each a worksheet. No one does them. At least that's how it was at the beginning. There were a lot of paper airplanes sailing around the room for the first few days. I figured Mr. Kermit would get mad, but he never made a peep about them. So the airplanes stopped. What was the point of making them if you couldn't get a rise out of the teacher? Eventually it got so boring that the only possible thing to do was the worksheet. It's kind of hard for me though, because the letters get all jumbled up, even if it's math. They never just ask, "What's 5 plus 3? They have to make it into a story about 5 brown rabbits and 3 white rabbits having a rabbit cotillion. That's where I get lost. Cotillion looks like licit loon to me. I'm hunched over my paper trying to make heads or tails of what seems to be an unbreakable code, when at the desk beside me, Kiana sits down her pen and peers at my paper, which is as untouched as the minute I got it. "You haven't even started yet?" she hisses. Sure I have, I replied defensively. She isn't sold. What question are you on? 1, I shoot back. I'm taking it slow, okay? I return to work, staring at the letters, telling them to arrange themselves into a form that makes sense to me. I guess I look like a scientist peering into a microscope before she blurts, "You can't read?" "Yes, I can," I say defensively. "I'm just pacing myself." She reaches over and plants a finger on question 1. "What does that say?" "There's no talking in class," I tell her. "You want to get us in trouble?" "Read it," she orders. Mr. Kermit takes a long, loud slurp of his giant coffee. "Read it." And I don't. It's not that I can't, but it would take time. "I don't feel like it," I mumble. "Parker," she urges. "This is stupid. You can get help with this. You just have to tell the teacher. Nobody can help you if they don't know there's a problem." My eyes find Mr. Kermit. His attention never wavers from his crossword puzzle, even though Raheem and Barnsdom are sword fighting with rulers, and Aldo leaves the room altogether. If I have to depend on Mr. Kermit for help, I'm going to be older than he is before I get any. And that is the end of chapter 3. Alright, next time, on Wednesday, we will start with chapter 4 about Aldo. Alright guys, have a great rest of your day. Keep working hard. Talk to you later.